I'm Kelly Vaughn, and welcome to Inside Indy. And you know, you see this really big smile on my face. I am just pleased as punch to have a very, very special guest in our studio with us today. In fact, I used to work with him some years ago, and you've heard him day in and day out on the radio for many, many years. It's Bernie Egan of B105.7. Hello, Bernie Egan.
Hi, Kelly Vaughn.
How are you?
Hi, you know, I couldn't be better considering it's late on a Sunday night.
You're absolutely right. Past your bedtime.
It is. My parents expect me home by 10.
You have been in radio for how many years now has it been?
Well, that's a good question because I started with MS, which is where WENS was, in 1981. So that's long enough ago right there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And prior to that, then, because you've worked in at a smaller station even before big time at MS, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, I worked at a couple of places because I went to Ball State, and first of all, I worked on the dorm station there, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, wow.
And then I worked at WERK in Muncie, but before that, I even worked at a station in Hartford City, Indiana. So that was back in the day when you had a lot of small stations.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could do that
Yes.
because nowadays, you know, when you're young and you try to get a job, they won't even let you work, right?
It's much more difficult, yeah.
But back then, you just kind of knock on the door and say, "Hey,"
Yeah, and they'll give you the keys.
to the place.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So why radio? What made you want to go into radio?
It was, when I was growing up, it was so exciting. I would listen to these guys on the radio, different cities, and I thought, they are having so much fun. That's what I want to do. So I was 10 years old. I said, this is it. And I will not take no for an answer. And I got a lot of people saying no to me, too.
Okay. Like who? Who said no?
I will not mention.
And not names, but tell us what happened.
I will not mention names.
Okay.
Could I mention a name?
Okay, go ahead.
Steve Cooper said no once.
No way.
Yeah, the guy you worked with at TPI?
Get out.
He said no.
When?
When he was working at WIFE, and I gave him a tape, and he said, hey, next weekend opening, I'll give it to you. And he said, later he called me, and he said, I need to apologize to you. I got cold feet, and I am so sorry. That was my fault. And I had total respect for that. Because some people will say, oh, no, it's not because you're blind. Well, that's exactly why it is. But he apologized. He came full circle with it. He came clean, and I respect that.
Wow. Okay. Wow. And I didn't know that story. So
There are so many you don't know, Kelly.
yeah. Well, thanks, Bernie.
So many stories. I make them up as I go.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
So the cold feet thing. Then how do you find whether it's viewers from television, listeners, how they feel about you as a personality and your blindness, or does it not matter?
I never mentioned it on the air. I never have. Many people know, but I mean, many people don't know because it doesn't affect them. You know, my work on the air has nothing to do with my blindness, which is another thing I love about radio. You know, it doesn't matter.
Right. And it doesn't matter either when you have to get up at, say, 5 in the morning to be on the air and you don't have to comb your hair because we're on the radio.
Hey, you got up at 5. I got up at 3:15.
Well, we started at 5, but yeah.
You know what? You and I actually started at 5:30.
We did?
Yes.
Okay, I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of shows.
Yeah,
over
I
the
know.
years.
I know. A long time ago.
Yeah. So you know what we're talking about. Bernie and I did the Bernie and Kelly show, or was it the Kelly and Bernie
It
show?
was
Okay.
Bernie and Kelly.
Okay.
Actually, it was Bernie Egan, special guest Kelly Vaughn.
But there you okay. I'll take what I can get. From 2006 to 2010, we did the morning show together on B105.7, which are some of my best years in radio.
We had a good time.
We really did.
Yes,
we really did. Yeah.
we did.
And I learned a lot from you as a personality and as in terms of interacting with someone who is blind. And we have another show here with Lee Martin, National Federation of the Blind. And when I started working with him, I had it down because I knew something about the etiquette in terms of dealing with someone
absolutely.
who's blind. But I honestly never thought about it with you.
Well, you know, when we worked on the air together, we were in separate studios. And so for a while, we barely encountered each other off the air. And then
Yeah.
finally we did, and we hit it off and had a great time.
Though I think initially, remember when I first came up to the studio to be with you, I thought you might have been a little bit hesitant to have somebody up there with you because I was broadcasting for the WIBC newsroom, which didn't work well because when I would be down in the studio doing the news, after the news, we're cracking up. Well, IBC is WIBC News, and it didn't fit. And that's
Right.
when I asked to come upstairs with you because
Right.
Sharon Alseth and I can't think of the other girl's name. She's on NPR now. She was there, and they would look at me like, "What is so funny?"
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like I'm listening to Bertie in my headphones. You just don't
Well,
understand.
I think for me it was just like, this is my, and sometimes when I'm on the air, I would run over and use that studio to do other things.
Oh, that's
and
right.
I thought, if she's in here, I can't use the studio to
She's
to
in
do
the
other
way.
things. Yeah,
in other
pretty, yeah,
words.
she's in the way.
Yeah. So think back over the years in radio. Are there any particular days that stand out that are monumental in your mind in terms of what was going on in the world?
Well, obviously 9/11
Yeah.
comes to mind. That was just so awful and so bizarre in terms of how we had to treat it. If you talk about world events, it doesn't get any more uh, uh, phenomenal than something like that happening to change everything. So yeah, that was one.
So you were on the air
I was.
that morning when it hit?
Yeah, yeah. I was on WENS. It was at that time it was Bernie and Stephanie.
The other woman.
Yeah, the other woman.
It's okay.
Yeah. Well, whatever
Cheater.
happened to
Anyway.
her? Sure do miss her. But no, it was we were on together, and this happened, and we had to basically go into kind of disaster mode and take it from there. I mean, you and I, we had an earthquake one day
Oh, I remember
while
that.
we were on the air.
We were live on the air.
Yeah, we were live on the air, and all of a sudden there's an earthquake. It was a minor earthquake.
The door
but
closed.
Yes, we
We
had
were
a door.
talking.
We had a door that stayed open all the time, and all of a sudden the door closed, and I figured it's either a ghost or something else.
And live on the air, I said, Bernie, the door just closed.
Yeah,
And
it was
did
an
we just have an
earthquake. So that
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
pretty amazing thing that happened.
yeah. And then remember the morning after Michael Jackson died?
Oh yeah, that was another sad moment. I mean, it really was. That was awful.
Yeah, we played a lot of his music. We were taking calls.
And we had people from a TV station over, and it was just a lot of interaction
Yeah,
on the air.
right. So and a lot of people, I'm sure they're curious, especially in this day of technology when everything is computerized. How are you able to do what you do, and though you cannot see the equipment in front of you?
I got real lucky with people who believed in me because when we first started going to this computer stuff, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, I had worked there for so long that the people there just figured, hey, Bernie can do whatever he needs to do. Well, now if a blind person comes to a studio, they might think, I don't know how this guy can do any of this. It's all perspective. I mean, I had been there so long, I was part of the woodwork really. And so it was like, okay, Bernie, you're going to have to learn to do this and we'll help you, but you got to figure it out. So that's what you do.
Okay. Now, I know you're on the air as a DJ, but you DJ outside of the radio station, right? Tell us about.
Yeah, I do. I mean, not as many anymore, but for years I did lots of weddings, lots of parties, class reunions, stuff like that, where you take the equipment, you set up, and you play. And again, even there, a lot of people don't know that I'm blind. So, it's a surprise to them.
Yeah, and I know when we were on the air, remember there was a point in which, well, first of all, I didn't know how to sometimes talk about things. Like you would go to a Pacer game, and I would say, did you see the Pacer game? And so I'm using words like see, and you taught me, it doesn't matter. Just, yeah, I saw the game.
And that's the thing. A lot of blind people, have to teach people because the average person doesn't sometimes know how to talk to a blind person. It's an amazing thing. There are so many obstacles you don't even think about. The word see, just because you don't see with your eyes, you still see it.
Right.
You watch TV, you don't listen to TV, So it's one of those things you just have to kind of educate people. And some people have a hard time getting used to it.
Right. Okay.
You didn't, but some people do.
Yeah. Well, Bernie, I appreciate you coming in, and I loved working with you, and I love working with you in radio, and I'm just so proud and to have you here on this show here at Channel 40, and just appreciate you coming in and having a conversation with me. Like old times.
Absolutely.
All right. Bernie Egan of B105.7. Thank you for joining us on Inside Indy, and we'll be back with more after this. And we're back here on Inside Indy, and we're enlightening you on, on a number of things: how to write a will, what happens if you don't have a will, and now we're going to talk about guardianship with Felicia Locke, who is an attorney in Indianapolis. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
And guardianship, explain to people what a guardianship is and in instances in which that comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely. So a guardianship is a legal proceeding where the court will appoint a person that will be responsible for the care and will be responsible for a person who's considered to be a protected person. When you hear me say a protected person, I'll be referring to a person that either has a guardian or a person that's in need of a guardian. And so the court will essentially appoint a person that would take care and be responsible of a person in need.
Okay, so give us some scenarios of examples of people who would need, what's their situation that they would need a guardian?
So a guardianship is based on incapacity. And so when we think of the elderly, we're thinking about an incapacity due to a mental illness or mental incapacity such as Alzheimer's, dementia. There's a lot of memory loss and confusion. We also think of incapacity as it relates to maybe someone that's been through an injury, such as a car accident, and they have a brain injury. We also think of incapacity as it may relate to an adult child that has a mental illness or a mental condition.
Now, and you mind if I share just a personal testimony here?
No,
I was the
absolutely.
guardian for my dad, who at 57 had a massive heart attack. And a lot of times people think when you have a heart attack, you're going to live or you're going to die. There is an in between.
Absolutely.
So he basically became like a Nancy Cruzan case at 57 years old. And all I could think was, how could the eyes who have seen me for so many years not recognize me? And he would just lie there and look at the ceiling. So he basically was in a persistent vegetative state. And I can remember the attorney coming in, and this is at Winona Hospital, and standing over his bed and says, "Mr. Vaughn, can you hear me? This is your daughter, Kelly. If you have any objection to her being your guardian, speak now." And of course, he could not speak.
Right.
And even thinking about it now, it makes me cry because that person can't take care of themselves.
Yes.
And it's a tremendous responsibility. So walk people through the responsibilities of a guardian and what they have to do.
Right. And so, first of all, I will say there's two different types of guardianships. And in response to your question, because you have guardianship of the person and guardianship of the estate, or the person could be guardian of both. So guardianship of the person it sounds like that's what you were. You making decisions on the person's living arrangement, whether they're living home or in a nursing facility, making decisions regarding their medications, health care, food, transportation, basically. As your role as a guardian, you're to make decisions based on the best interests of that person, and which is a huge responsibility. Like I said, everything from their medical care to where they're going to reside. As a guardian of the person's estate, you're managing their money and their assets. You're paying their bills, managing their checkbook, investing their money if that's something that's necessary. And so
I can totally relate to everything you're saying.
Yeah.
And at that time I was 30, and it was a tremendous amount of responsibility. Not only that, there are 4 siblings, and so
yes,
being appointed the guardian, and then you have to control the money, where it's going, who gets what. My mother was still living, and I was the guardian. So, and I remember the hardest part was the accounting, And
Yes.
that I had to keep track of record of everything I spent because at some
Absolutely.
point you're supposed to go before the judge after 2 years or something, and that terrified me. Again, I'm 30 years old. I'm scared to death because you're handling all this stuff. And he ended up dying actually before we even had time in court. But I think I took pretty good care. But some of the problems, sometimes the family members, they're giving their input on how you're supposed to spend his money, and that can get touchy because they think it should be done one way, and you're thinking, no,
Right.
we're not buying that, and so.
Well, you can consider their wishes, but as a guardian, it's ultimately your decision. And then you're right, you do have to file an inventory with the court, which is basically an inventory of their assets. And sometimes it requires getting an appraisal or a value if there's a house or a car. And then, like you said, filing an accounting, which shows how you use the guardian's money. Essentially, how was their bank account used? What bills did you pay?
Right, everything is
Yeah,
every
everything.
down to the dime. So the people out there watching now may not even realize that this exists, or that they may have a person who is having issues. And do you think most people realize that? Okay, my mother, I can tell she's changing. I think this is Alzheimer's. We've gotten that diagnosis that they need that, or do hospitals tell you Betty Sue needs a guardian? How does a person come to that conclusion that it's necessary?
I don't know if most people know. I kind of see both sides where I'm getting a call because the nursing home has said, your father can't make this decision, you need to find an attorney, you need to be his guardian. And then I have people that still come to me and they think that they can do power of attorney. And you cannot. A power of attorney is not for someone that has a mental incapacity. And so
what is power of attorney for?
So power of attorney is, so let me tell you the differences between a power of attorney and a guardianship. And so they kind of can act the same way where you're making decisions on behalf of another person, but a power of attorney is voluntary by the person you're making the decisions for. The guardianship, and that person will appoint you as their power of attorney. The court appoints guardians, and the guardian could be, the appointment of a guardian could be voluntary or involuntary. Power of attorney is easily revoked. The court has to terminate the guardianship.
Okay. Wow.
And a power of attorney cannot be made by someone that's incompetent. Someone that's incapacitated or has a mental illness, they cannot appoint someone as power of attorney. They would need a guardian appointed by a court.
Okay. So how do you file for a guardianship then?
So guardianships in Indiana are filed in probate court, and they're filed in the county that the protected person resides in.
Okay. And so does that typically, do you just go to probate or do you call an attorney? How do most people operate with that?
So that's a very good question. I do recommend hiring an attorney because there's a lot of forms that are required for guardianships, and it's a complicated process. I don't know too many people that's been able to file one on their own. They started and then they end up calling an attorney because the process is complicated, or the courts won't set a hearing date because they didn't file the paperwork right, or there's a lot of paperwork that's missing.
Okay.
And so I would recommend an attorney that can file the documents for you, that can attend the hearing for you, that will be able to instruct you as to your duties and responsibilities as a guardian. And then the protected person, they can have their own attorney as well. And the court may appoint a guardian ad litem, which is an advocate, which is someone that would be at the hearing for the protected person, if the protected person is physically able to attend the hearing.
Okay. Well, I wanted to get into father's rights, so you're going to have to come back.
Okay.
We talk about that and other issues that go through probate court, but it's been really an interesting discussion. And I just have one more question, because I think a lot of people would have this question before we take off. We got about a minute left. Life insurance versus a person's will.
Very good question. Typically, life insurance, if there's a beneficiary that is not an asset that goes through probate, That is life insurance. If it has a beneficiary, it just goes to the beneficiary. So any account that has a beneficiary is not necessarily a probate item. Life insurance, a pay-on-death bank account, a retirement account that has a beneficiary, those aren't items that typically would go through probate. Would go through probate.
Okay. Okay. I think it's a legitimate question. A lot of
Yeah.
people wonder about that. Does the will supersede life insurance? Will you come back?
Absolutely.
Okay. This has been very enlightening, and I feel better already. I'm going to get that will done. So I appreciate it so much. Felicia Locke, attorney for the Locke Law Firm, is her firm, and check her out. Information's on the screen. Thank you so much for joining us
Yeah, thank you.
on Inside Indy, and thank you for joining us. I'm Kelly Vaughn. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.